I'll call this meeting at the City of Kerrville Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Dorothy, would you call roll, please?
Yes, sir. Bob Waller,
Here.
Garrett Harmon,
Here.
Don Barnett, Michael Siegerman,
Here.
Rustin Zuber,
Here.
David Jones, Marty Leonard. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Visitor Citizens Forum is number one. Any person with business not scheduled on the agenda is encouraged to briefly speak to the commission. Please fill out the speaker request form and give it to the commission secretary prior to the meeting. The number of speakers will be limited to the first 10, and each speaker limited to 3 minutes. No formal action can be taken on these items, as the Open Meetings Act requires formal action items be posted on an agenda no later than 72 hours before the meeting. If formal action is required, the items will be placed on the agenda for a future meeting. Item number 2, consent agenda. All items listed below on the consent agenda are considered routine or ministerial in nature and will be enacted with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of items unless a commissioner or citizen so requests, in which case the item or items will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Item 2A is approval of the minutes from the October 19th, 2017 meeting on page 2. If there's no comments, edits.
Well, I think what you, under members present at the bottom, you have David Jones, alternate, sitting in for Siegerman, and Marty Leonard, alternate, sitting in for Waller. So that probably needs to be corrected.
No, it does.
We were all there.
I think that must have come from a prior meeting.
He's right.
Thanks, Mike.
Sabina, on the motion that was made at the end, should it say 14 banners as opposed to signs?
Are you asking if it should?
Yeah. I guess they're signs, but
Right, banners are signs.
okay. It's fine, just asking that.
I move that we approve the minutes with the corrections and the members present.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Passes 4-0. Okay, number 3A, or number 3, public hearing consideration and action. 3A, public hearing and action, the CUP and resolution. Sabina?
This item comes before you because this, the threeplex that's being requested is a conditional use in this zoning district. We are on Clay Street, across the street from the Holy Cross Lutheran Church, and right to the west and to the east, sort of southwest and northeast, we have single-family residential. This zoning district is an RT, which is a residential transition, allows some limited commercial uses, and I'll show you that on the on this use list, but I'll spare you your eyes. And basically, the uses that are listed by right in this RT district would allow the professional office that was constructed on this site, but is now being requested for conversion from 3 lease spaces, 3 offices, to the to 3 residential units. So these are the uses that would be permitted by right in the zoning district, which the office use is. And then the conditional uses that would come back before you, and so the multifamily, which is what this request would cover, would come before you and then ultimately the city council. So the action item that is before you this evening is for recommendation to the city council.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I just wanted to show you real briefly. This is the existing site plan. And just to show you how the interior is laid out for that. Let me show you just a photo here. So there's a driveway basically on the south or the western side that leads back to the parking in the back. So it does have the parking that would be required. And there's a brief analysis in your staff report too. And so we do recommend approval of it.
All right, thank you. This does require public hearing. I'll open the public hearing at 4:36. Anybody wishing to speak to the commission needs to go to the podium. State your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Scott Eilers. 4877 Centerpoint Road, Fredericksburg, Texas. I'm here on behalf of Jeremy It's the owner at 714 Clay Street to answer any questions and push for the approval of this change, as this building has been sitting empty for nearly 2 years, and location for its original intended purpose doesn't appear to be what is generating any money for the owner. So we're hoping that a multifamily unit there, not exclusive to any age, but probably individuals in these houses, maybe a couple, is what would be best. And like she said earlier, the parking for 3 units is there. We had this drawn a couple years ago with 4 units, and we didn't have the parking, and now we do with 3. So I guess that's all I have to say, and if there's any questions I can answer on his behalf.
Okay, thank you. That was my question. It says quadplex here, but really a triplex is what you're looking for. Okay, if there's no other business in public hearing, I'll close the public hearing at 4:37. Commissioners, questions, comments?
I think this is a symptom of a bad RT zone anyways, because I'm near there in my office, and nothing's happening there in that district. So I don't know, I think at some point we should look at that whole RT thing, and because I think this problem is happening because of that district. So that's just something down the road to think about.
Because offices were allowed to be built there in the first place?
Yeah, they're allowed to be built there, but they have to look like a house.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's hurting these little businesses. This one, there was a house that was torn down. I don't know if Jeremy is the one who built it originally or not, but, okay. Tore down the dilapidated house, built a really good, solid structure here, and it's just not working. So
I think it really kind of comes down to location. For example, over there where on West Water Street in the transitional area, a bunch of those houses have been converted into businesses.
Yeah.
And that's working well for that location.
Right, maybe then this district needs to be looked at. Maybe it's not a good RT district.
Personally,
Yeah.
I was thinking transitional is what it looks like when you drive down the street.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when I was on the Zoic, there was a lot of discussion. Did RT mean it was transitioning into something, or did it mean it was like a buffer area that was a transition of space? In other words, you had like commercial on one side and residential on the other. And I'm not sure that was really ever well defined. So there was some confusion on even what the RT was supposed to be accomplishing. So that's just
It appears on
some
that
food
side of
for
the
thought.
street that most of it's residential.
Right.
This was something that was, public notice was sent out to the surrounding area?
Yes.
Was there any contact from anyone in the area?
I haven't heard of anything. Dorothy, have you? Okay.
I mean, I think it lends itself really well for what they want to do with it.
I agree.
I drove over and took a look at it, and it's very clean. It's got plenty of parking in the back.
That's
It
well
gets
built.
all vehicles off the street. It's not going to be a nuisance in the area. And
I think the rents would probably be high enough that it's going to draw, like you said, couples, as opposed to individuals, the way it's laid out. Any other comments? If not, I'll accept a motion.
I'll make a motion, we approve the conditional use.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Passes 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
3B, public hearing and action, a text amendment. Speak.
So we had a couple of workshop discussion items on these small network nodes and some recent activity at the state legislature. Oops. Okay. Basically, what happened this past over the past few months is a decision that came down where the city must allow these network nodes within the city rights of way, and so some of the discussion that we've had before is some of the things that we are still allowed to do. We have not just federal but also statewide state preemption. So and what the last decision that came down really focused on were these network nodes, and those are antenna and some of the lower poles that I showed you in some of the photos there, and then these transfer facilities, which are the wires. So we're going to take this in bites. And the first bite, remember that we are still allowed to adopt some design guidelines for areas that have been designated within the city limits as design districts. Later on, we'll come back and discuss, quite possibly even through the comprehensive plan process that we're going through right now, attaching reasonable design guidelines to within our ordinances. But today, what we're doing is creating the language that would allow us to attach those design guidelines that are coming for discussion to these three districts. Those being the Guadalupe River Trail, the CBD district, and the Gateway, the entrance district. And I'll show you on a map here. This was a map that was included in your packet, but again, to save your eyes. So the CBD district, and really what this is, I think, is more of a clarification, since the statute specifies design districts, that we would like to just be very clear that we're adding that language, the exact terminology into these districts. And this is the purpose statement of the CBD district that, to me, pulls it out, discerns it as a separate, distinct district, hence a design district. And the CBD, which in the darker also includes that downtown core, but essentially it goes from Hayes down to the river, from Tybee to Jefferson, up Washington, across North, up Earl Garrett, and then across to Barnett.
Sabina?
Yes.
Is the downtown core a part of the central business district, or is it a separate district?
It's part of the CBD district. Okay. It's just a smaller, distinct part where you have some additional language, but especially there is no additional parking required if you use an existing structure, even if you put a more intense use in that building. So
in designating a design district, we don't need to call out the downtown core separately?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Because the language that I showed you here, later on it goes on to talk about the downtown core.
Okay.
But it's within this section.
You think any controversy would ever come up about that?
About
Not
downtown
Not
core.
including the DC?
The recommendation is that we do include the DC
I mean,
in the CBD.
but that's not in the language, it only says the CBD. Do we need to make sure that that's, is a part of it?
I'll make sure that it is. I only excerpted this part out.
Okay.
The purpose statement is actually larger. It goes more into the description of the uses and those kinds of things. So I thought that was a little much to put on the slide, but I'll make sure that we specify that the downtown core is
I
included
think
in
that's
that.
a good point, could be controversial at some point.
The Gateway District, and this is the purpose statement in there, obviously, to, again, distinguish the district as the gateway into the city, and have it be, and have the uses within the district be welcoming, more of a tourist type, and again, in appearance as well. And that extends largely on either side of Sidney Baker, down to the stadium, and up to a small road called Leslie. And then, and I'll show you this in parts, the Guadalupe River District, and this is the purpose statement there. Obviously, uses would be determined to be compatible, considered to be compatible with the river. And just starting west of town to the city limits, to Arcadia Loop, and then picking up again at Thompson Drive, down to Guadalupe Street, and to Louise Hayes Park, and then picking up again in the vicinity of G Street, south of Memorial, between Memorial and 173, or Bandera Highway. And then, interestingly enough, a little piece on the east end of town, just north of the Fox Tank development there. And as I mentioned, so we're taking this in steps, so this would be the first step in kind of creating and having those districts be able to receive those additional guidelines that we'll be talking about in the future. And that's
I
all
guess
have.
one of my questions, I guess I've always thought for a number of years that the gateway there is included, of course, the one you show, which starts at I-10 or a little above it, comes down to Holdsworth. Not the GR, but just the Gateway District. But you only show here, that's the only gateway portion, as opposed to the gateway being the southern part of 16 coming into Kerrville and Junction, and 27 as it's a gateway on each end. So you think if we designate these, that would cover that Junction Highway route, Memorial, Broadway, all the way out, going west towards Ingram?
That is certainly something that we can discuss. What we advertised for this evening was just these 3 zoning districts, but as we go
Okay.
into the future and have further discussions, absolutely, I think we can talk about that. These were relatively easy because they've already been distinguished and have had previous discussion on designating these areas as special districts, as special areas. The others, if we can't identify specific districts, then we may be looking at a designation and having to go out and conduct surveys and deciding exactly where we'd want to put those other areas.
Because
that can be done.
what this does, as a design district, we can put rules in place inside there for these nodes.
Right,
No
it's
place.
basically, they'd be ready to receive the additional regulations that we'd be looking at.
Okay. I was in, I guess, Bernie about a month ago, and I pulled up to a stoplight right there on Main Street, coming in off I-10, crossing, going towards 46, and looked up, and they've got nodes there. And it was placed on a light standard. Wasn't abusive at all. But that's the first time I'd noticed it, actually looking for one. And so I had a better feel for what it was. Okay, this requires a public hearing as well. So I'll open a public hearing at 4:50. Anyone wishing to address the Planning and Zoning Commission, please step up to the podium, state your name and address, please. Seeing none or hearing none, I close the public hearing at 4:51. Any comments from the commissioners?
I think this makes sense, and especially as a step in the direction of being able to regulate these wireless nodes. I think it's important to include since the downtown core is listed separately, even though it's a part of the central business district. I think listing it in the motion would probably make some sense.
So outside of these design districts, what happens? Nothing? I mean, they can put nodes anywhere? Is that, there's no way to regulate them? Is that correct?
Well, if you'll recall, we can, in our parks and on the rights of way, on narrow rights of way,
Okay.
in our residential areas, we can limit them, and we'll be looking at that as well as we go into the future. But the specific recommendation coming out of the last legislative session was that this was something that we could still do, and that we definitely want to pursue labeling the design district. So that was something that was pretty clear that we could still do.
Okay.
I talked to the president of Hill Country Telephone Co-op just this week and asked a question about this and if they were doing anything. And he said, well, what they did the plaza or the plots, market plots in Fredericksburg. And I thought for an area which is like a city block, I guess, kind of, he said they had to put like 32 different nodes in there to cover that area. I guess what I expected was a node or something on a wireless basis would cover that whole area, but that's not the case. So these may be more intense than we anticipate. Any other comments, questions? If not, I'll accept the motion.
I move that we designate the Guadalupe River District, the Central Business District, the Downtown Core, and the Gateway District as design districts as presented.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Have a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Oh,
Just for grins.
one opposed. Okay, staff reports.
I have nothing to add.
Do we have a meeting scheduled? When's our next scheduled meeting? First part of December, I guess.
Yeah,
It would be December 7th if we have one.
right, and
December 7th, is that what you said?
If we have anything to present, it would be,
right,
Maybe the
and
next
at
day.
this point, we didn't notify anything, so, unless we have a discussion item, I don't believe that we have business for it.
Okay, 2 weeks from today is the 30th. We don't have anything for that date.
That would not normally be a meeting anyway, just,
Just based on,
if it's a fifth Tuesday. Fifth
okay,
Thursday,
okay.
no.
Just goes to the next month then. Okay. If there's no other business for this commission meeting today, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Have a motion, have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Hold your- I thank you. Passes 4-0.